Dame Edna used to say Dad was her manager. She'd say that she paid for it all and that Dad was ripping her off, and that's how he could buy all this art. Some families, had sport as something that brought them together, and our family had art, because Dad's sport was kind of hunting out artworks that he wanted.
I've always thought of myself as rather a dilettante, really, and a little bit guilty about that. I always knew I was an artist of some kind. I've always, in a sense, been more interested in collecting things than doing things.
Dad started collecting as a child. When he first started getting pocket money at sort of 11, he'd save up and buy second-hand books. And his mother, with whom he had a complicated relationship, said to him, why are you buying all those dirty old books? You don't know where they've been. He loved the chase of collecting. He'd tour in all these cities, and he'd always visit galleries and find things. There'd always be sort of brown paper packages hidden in desk drawers, which of course were books that he'd bought secretly, hoping Lizzie, his wife, and his accountant wouldn't find out and sort of yell at him. I think what interested Dad was art made between 1890 and 1920, when artists like Klimt and other symbolists were shockingly modern. He loved strangeness and mystery and narrative in artworks. His favorite artist was an Australian artist called Charles Conder. Conder was a significant figure in Australian Impressionism, and I think Conder appealed to Dad because here's an Australian that goes to London. And of course, Dad, in 1959, saved up. He sold an artwork he bought as a child and took a steamer to Europe, and then had this British career. This was one of Dad's favorite pictures, made very shortly after Conder left Australia and came to Europe and went to Normandy. In the foreground, you see the scrubbiness of the dune and the grass. There's an element of sort of homesickness in how he's painting the foreground. And I think living with Australian art was a way of Dad connecting with and remembering home. Dad obviously was a total bibliophile. He loved illustrated books, he loved ghost stories, but at the center of the library is Oscar Wilde and his copy of The Importance of Being Earnest, inscribed to his publisher Smithers, who was the great counterculture publisher of the 1890s, meant a lot to Dad, and he'd found it years and years ago and managed to hang on to it. And I think that's how we learn about literature, isn't it? And learn about collecting. We find one poet or author, and then we discover, the figures that relate to them, and we explore and learn that way, and that's what Dad did. People will know Dame Edna and his public life, but the way in which he collected and some of the amazing things that he owned will be new to people, and it's such an important facet of Dad's character. He was endlessly curious, and you see that here and in his work, and we miss him.